This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Donald Trump is really worried about his former acting Attorney General, Jeff Clark. Donald Trump is really worried about Jeff Clark. And I don't mean for his own well-being. I mean about what Jeff Clark could do or say in trying to defend the loss of his bar license in the District of Columbia. He's very concerned about that. How do I know? Because he sent his lawyer, Todd Blanche, his criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, to sit in on every one of the hearings, appeals and otherwise, that Jeff Clark has raised in a way that he never did, Donald Trump, as it relates to John Eastman, the former half-baked constitutional scholar who devised the fake elector scheme. He sees more criminal peril and jeopardy in Jeff Clark than he ever did with John Eastman. Because in the John Eastman case, when John Eastman, for instance, was trying to withhold emails and documents and communications with Donald Trump, and a federal judge in the Central District of California, right, made a decision that he had to turn over all those things, including his interactions with Donald Trump, that rose the level of a crime or a fraud. Donald Trump never appeared in that case. That was the case of John Eastman versus the Jan 6 committee. You'd think Donald Trump would have entered an appearance, try to intervene, try to argue the validity of some sort of privilege, some sort of executive privilege or immunity, but he never did. Not the case with Jeff Clark. He fears more mortal peril because of Jeff Clark than he ever did with John Eastman. And now we've got some new developments with Jeff Clark, because not only is he a co-conspirator with Donald Trump in Georgia and an unindicted co-conspirator in all things DC election interference, but Jeff Clark knows where the bodies are buried related to Donald Trump and the issue of election interference. And so Jeff Clark got called up on grievance charges where he's going to get his law license pulled, much the way that Rudy Giuliani got his law license pulled, and other people affiliated with Donald Trump, like Lynn Wood, had their law licenses pulled. Jeff Clark is fighting for his life. And so there's two things that have gone on in Jeff Clark's world that impact Donald Trump. One, the DC Grievance Committee, which is a 3-member grievance committee that oversees all attorney discipline in this case, in this matter for Jeff Clark, and hold in their palm of their hands the question of whether the privilege to practice law under a District of Columbia bar license is going to continue to be held by Jeff Clark or not. And so first that committee subpoenaed a lot of records and communications and emails from Jeff Clark, and he asserted his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, a criminal privilege. Think about it. Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, because a person can't be compelled to testify against himself in a criminal setting, because under our system of government and justice, a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. He doesn't have an obligation to even testify, and therefore we can't compel him to testify if he asserts the Fifth Amendment privilege. And a DC appellate court, not the federal courts, but the DC Court of Appeal, sitting over the territory or district of the District of Columbia. They have their own court system. They have their own superior court, and they've got their own trial level court, and they've got their own appellate court. It's not federal, it's District of Columbia. That court granted a motion to quash or motion for protective order in favor of Jeff Clark. So that was the good news. He doesn't have to turn over documents, because documents are considered testimonial. It's not just testimony, like swearing under oath and giving testimony. Documents can be testimonial because of what they say, what they read. So he got a win at the DC Court of Appeals level, a hearing that was attended by Todd Blanche on behalf of Donald Trump. Now fast forward to the issue of whether people in the executive wing, in the executive branch, at around the time that Jeff Clark was a lower level civil environmental lawyer who for about 25 minutes, no, seriously, about a week and a half, apparently was the acting Attorney General of the United States, elevated by one Donald Trump, whether the people he worked with that were above him in the hierarchy are going to testify against him, particularly the people who testified during the Jan 6 committee hearings, such as the actual acting attorney general after Bill Barr resigned, Jeff Rosen, his deputy or acting deputy attorney general, Richard Donahue, Patrick Philbin, the White House deputy counsel who worked with Pat Cipollone, whether they're going to testify. And then a very interesting character that we've heard a little about. I'm going to share it on the hot take. Ken Klukowski. Who's Ken Klukowski? I can barely get his tongue twister of a name out. Ken Klukowski, there it is, worked for Jeff Clark and testified at various times that he thought it was inappropriate and outside the scope of an environmental lawyer at the Department of Justice to write a letter on DOJ letterhead, Department of Justice letterhead, addressed to state officials in Georgia to tell them that there was fraud in the election and that they should delay the certification of their vote when there wasn't. And why was an environmental lawyer doing that? Now, we heard about Ken Klukowski. There, I got it. When Jeff Clark was trying to remove his Georgia prosecution, his indictment in Georgia, and get that case out of Fulton County State Criminal Court over to federal court under a federal officer removal standard. But in order to do that, you got to show that what you were doing was under the color of your office, fit your job description. And so Ken Klukowski testified on behalf of basically the Fulton County District Attorney that, voting and vote certification was not part of the remit of the environmental division of the Department of Justice that Jeff Clark at one time headed. So he's going to testify, I assume, and they're worried about that too. Now, this is the ruling by the head of the grievance committee about this issue. The person's name is Merrill Hirsch. That everything that Jeff Clark, Richard Donahue, and Patrick Philbin, who will testify and crap all over, obviously Jeff Clark, they're going to say, I know what they're going to say because I've seen their testimony in the Jan 6 committee. They're going to say he was outside the scope of his authority. He had no duty or authority to render any opinions on official letterhead or otherwise about the outcome of an election or about the fraud that the Department of Justice had found, because there was no fraud that the Department of Justice had found. That all those positions were absolutely contrary to the official position of the Department of Justice, that Jeff Clark violated the chain of command because he stepped outside the hierarchy and had a direct meeting or two with Donald Trump when he had 3 or 4 bosses above him and never told his bosses above that. So he knew, Jeff Clark knew, in other words, that he was doing something inappropriate by meeting directly with the president of the United States at the time, Donald Trump, and giving him advice about how he could interfere with the election and stop the peaceful transfer of power. That's their testimony. Patrick Philbin will testify to that, I'm sure. And Ken Klukowski is going to testify. I used to work with Jeff Clark. I don't know what he's talking about voting machines and voter fraud. We never investigated that. We never found that. That's not something we did. At best, Jeff Clark was fed that false misinformation by the Trump campaign and Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and others about this fake analysis, phony analysis, made up fake news about hardware and software, Smartmatic and Dominion voting machines being used by the Biden campaign to flip votes from Trump to Biden, all fake, all false, all a lie. Such a lie that Fox News has had to pay over $1 billion and fire half of its people because and pay it to Dominion in a defamation case pending in Delaware. That's how we know it's a lie. It's $1 billion lie, or $780 million. And so Jeff Clark is trying to fight off his losing his bar license. But Donald Trump's worried about what he's going to say in that hearing, which is under oath, becomes public, and can be used, just as John Eastman's testimony to try to fight off his bar license being revoked was used against him and Donald Trump in other proceedings. That's what they're worried about. Sworn statements made by Jeff Clark that are inconsistent with Donald Trump's defense position. That's why they have Todd Blanche sitting on these proceedings and sitting on these hearings. It reminds me of like Godfather 2, right? When they fly in Frankie Pentangeli's brother from the old country and make him sit in the back so that Frank Pentangeli suddenly has amnesia when he's testifying against the Godfather, Michael Corleone. Sorry to break out there with a little bit of pop culture, but sort of like that. Todd Blanche is in the back, and Jeff Clark's got to look around and got to worry about his family. He better worry that Todd Blanche doesn't go visit him in whatever holding cell he's in and suggest to him the Roman emperor way out of things. Go look it up in the movie. And now it's time for a brief lesson on the history of toilet paper. The first perforated toilet paper rolls were introduced in 1890, but it wasn't until 1930 that we officially had splinter-free tissue. Prior to that, people just used whatever was on hand. Corn cobs, parchment, even pages from the Old Farmer's Almanac. Nowadays, we're clear-cutting our forests just to make something that we use once and flush down the toilet. That's why I love Real paper. Real makes a sustainable toilet paper that contains no trees and instead uses 100% bamboo. Real's paper is certified by the Forest Stewardship Council, meaning that they are responsibly harvesting the bamboo grass that's used for their paper. And while the other conventional tree-based papers are wrapped in plastic in the grocery aisle, Real paper's packaging is plastic-free and compostable and offers free shipping on all orders. But here's the best part. When I use Real, it doesn't feel like I'm sacrificing something to help the earth. In fact, it feels like an upgrade. It truly has become my go-to toilet paper. Real paper is available in easy, hassle-free subscriptions or for one-time purchases on their website. All orders are conveniently delivered to your door with free shipping in 100% recyclable, plastic-free packaging. If you head to realpaper.com/legalaf and sign up for a subscription using my code LegalAF at checkout, you'll automatically get 30% off your first order and free shipping. That's REELPAPER.com/legalAF or enter promo code LegalAF to get 30% off your first order plus free shipping. So let's stop flushing our forests and try Real's tree-free paper. Real is paper for the planet. So where are we right now? Merrill Hirsch, head of the DC Bar Grievance Committee, has ruled that everything that Jeff Rosen and Richard Donahue and Pat Philbin and Ken Klukowski testified in public. There's a waiver of the executive privilege. The Department of Justice has waived the executive privilege, and they get to testify. As the things they haven't already testified about, then they're reserving judgment on that. So he'll have some ability, Jeff Clark, to fight off some of their testimony. Now, if he doesn't like this decision, he can take it up and try to stop it with, again, go back to the D.C. appellate court, the appellate court in the District of Columbia, not the federal one, and try to stop it. But at the rate this is going, he's going to lose his bar license. John Eastman's going to lose or has lost his bar license. Rudy Giuliani lost his bar license. Jenna Ellis, who pled guilty, barely lost her law license. Ken Chesbrough, who's in a world of hurt, having also devised the fake elector scheme because he lied to investigators in Michigan after he'd already pled guilty to a felony in Georgia. He's going to lose his bar license. And, that should be a warning, a wake-up call to the current lawyers for Donald Trump. The Todd Blanches of the world, the John Lauros, Chris Keiss, Alina Habba, Cliff Robert, and others. I like my law career. I wouldn't put it in jeopardy for any individual client, any client at all. But that doesn't seem to be the people that get sucked in like a tractor beam into the orbit of Donald Trump. They just don't. They just seems to have compromised their ethics and their professional judgment in a way that I've never seen before. We'll continue to report on this type of byproduct of the attempt to interfere with the peaceful transfer of power and the lawyers, at least for now, that are being held accountable on the MeidasTouch network on this YouTube channel. And on a show we call, wait for it, Legal AF. Yes, that cheeky title is exactly what you think it is. We do it Wednesday and Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And you can follow us on the YouTube, and you can pick it up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, let me just do a quick sidebar. If you leave a comment and you give thumbs up, it helps with our ratings. We're not like cable news where if you just watch the television, it somehow has a positive impact on ratings. For YouTube to work, you got to engage with the product, so to speak. And so if you'll do that, if you like what we're doing, it'll help keep the lights on and keep us on the air. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, This is Michael Popak reporting.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.